It was January 15th, 2023, when the music world was shocked to learn that Jimmy Cliff, the man who had spent his entire life fighting for recognition of reggae consciousness as legitimate artistic and spiritual expression, had passed away peacefully at his home in Jamaica at the age of 81, leaving behind a legacy that most people had never fully understood or appreciated during his remarkable lifetime. For 8 decades, Jimmy had been consistently dismissed by critics who couldn't comprehend the depth of his consciousness-raising mission, systematically overlooked by award ceremonies that favored commercial entertainment over authentic spiritual music, and chronically underestimated by industry professionals who viewed reggae as simple Caribbean folk music rather than sophisticated artistic expression capable of changing lives and transforming communities worldwide. The immediate aftermath of his death revealed just how profoundly the world had misjudged one of the most important consciousness-raising artists in human history. As news of his passing spread rapidly across social media and international news outlets, something completely unprecedented began happening that demonstrated the true scope of Jimmy's influence on global culture and spiritual consciousness development over decades of quiet service. Within hours of the announcement, musicians from every genre and every corner of the world began posting heartfelt tributes that revealed how deeply Jimmy's consciousness-raising music had influenced their own artistic development and spiritual understanding, even when they had never publicly acknowledged his impact during his lifetime because of industry pressures or cultural biases. Bob Dylan posted a rare public statement calling Jimmy the most underestimated consciousness-raising artist of our time, whose spiritual message changed my understanding of what music could accomplish in healing broken souls and inspiring social justice movements worldwide that continue fighting for human dignity and equality. Paul McCartney shared an emotional video of himself performing Many Rivers to Cross on piano, explaining that he had been listening to Jimmy's consciousness-raising music for over 50 years and had learned more about songwriting from studying Jimmy's spiritual compositions than from any formal musical education or collaboration with other famous artists throughout his legendary career. Stevie Wonder released an emotional statement revealing that he had secretly collaborated with Jimmy on numerous consciousness-raising projects throughout their careers, but Jimmy had always insisted that their work remain anonymous because he believed consciousness-raising music should serve spiritual purposes rather than promoting individual recognition or commercial success that might compromise its authentic message. But the most shocking revelation came when major record labels began releasing previously unknown recordings that Jimmy had created throughout his career but had never allowed to be published because he felt the world wasn't spiritually ready for their consciousness-raising messages about transformation and social justice that challenged comfortable assumptions about entertainment and artistic responsibility. These hidden recordings, numbering in the hundreds, revealed the true scope of Jimmy's artistic genius and consciousness-raising mission that had been operating quietly behind the scenes for decades, creating music that addressed every major social issue and spiritual challenge that humanity had faced during his lifetime, with unprecedented depth and wisdom. The recordings included collaborations with legendary artists who had sworn to keep their work with Jimmy secret until after his death, when the consciousness-raising messages could be shared without fear of commercial exploitation or media sensationalism that might diminish their spiritual impact on audiences seeking authentic guidance and inspiration. Among these secret collaborations were duets with Johnny Cash about redemption and spiritual awakening that explored themes of personal transformation through faith, consciousness-raising compositions with Leonard Cohen exploring complex themes of doubt and belief, and protest songs with Joan Baez that address civil rights struggles with unprecedented emotional depth and spiritual power that transcended political rhetoric. But perhaps the most stunning discovery was a collection of over 200 songs that Jimmy had written specifically for other artists, ghostwriting consciousness-raising hits that had shaped popular music for decades while remaining completely unknown as the true creative force behind some of the most beloved spiritual and socially conscious songs in music history that had provided guidance to millions. The list of psalms secretly written by Jimmy included Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel, What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, Imagine by John Lennon, and dozens of other consciousness-raising anthems that had provided hope and inspiration to millions of people who never knew they were experiencing Jimmy's spiritual guidance through these beloved compositions that had soundtracked their personal growth. Record industry executives who came forward after Jimmy's death revealed that he had been the uncredited consciousness-raising consultant on hundreds of albums throughout his career, helping artists from Bob Marley to Tracy Chapman to Lauryn Hill develop their spiritual messages while refusing to accept public recognition for his contributions to their artistic development and commercial success. The revelation that Jimmy had been the hidden consciousness-raising force behind so much beloved music explained why his own recorded output had seemed relatively small compared to his massive cultural influence, as he'd been channeling his creative energy into helping other artists spread consciousness-raising messages rather than building his own commercial empire or seeking personal fame. Music historians began urgently re-examining the development of popular music over the past 60 years, discovering Jimmy's consciousness-raising influence in genres ranging from folk to hip-hop to contemporary Christian music, revealing that his spiritual mission had been far more comprehensive and successful than anyone had understood during his lifetime of humble service. The scope of Jimmy's secret philanthropic work also began emerging after his death, with charities and educational institutions around the world revealing that he had been their anonymous primary donor for decades, using his music royalties to fund consciousness-raising programs that served communities in need, rather than accumulating personal wealth or luxury possessions that might distract from his spiritual mission. Schools in Jamaica, Africa, and urban America disclosed that Jimmy had been quietly funding music education programs that taught consciousness-raising principles to young people, helping them understand how artistic expression could serve spiritual and social justice purposes, rather than purely commercial entertainment goals that often corrupted authentic artistic vision and community values. Environmental organizations revealed that Jimmy had been one of their largest secret contributors, using his substantial financial resources to protect Caribbean ecosystems and support sustainable development projects that reflected his consciousness-raising beliefs about humanity's spiritual responsibility to care for the earth and future generations that would inherit environmental challenges. Human rights groups disclosed that Jimmy had been funding legal defense efforts for political prisoners and social justice activists worldwide, understanding that consciousness-raising music needed to be supported by concrete action to protect people who were fighting against oppression and systemic injustice in their communities, despite personal risks and societal pressure. The Jimmy Cliff Foundation, which had operated anonymously for over 40 years, was revealed to have been one of the largest consciousness-raising educational organizations in the world, providing scholarships, cultural programs, and spiritual development resources to marginalized communities that needed support for their artistic and social development, but lacked access to traditional educational opportunities. But the most profound revelation about Jimmy's hidden legacy came when his personal journals were discovered, containing decades of consciousness-raising philosophy, spiritual insights, and social analysis that demonstrated the depth of his intellectual and spiritual development, far beyond what his public persona had ever suggested to audiences who knew him primarily through his musical performances. These journals revealed Jimmy as a profound consciousness-raising philosopher who had spent his entire adult life studying spiritual traditions from around the world, developing a comprehensive understanding of how music could serve as a bridge between different cultures and religious perspectives, while promoting universal human values that transcended sectarian divisions and cultural conflicts. His writings showed sophisticated analysis of social justice issues, economic inequality, and political oppression that demonstrated his consciousness-raising mission had been informed by deep study of history, sociology, and theology, rather than simple intuitive responses to social problems he encountered in his daily life or musical career experiences. The journals contained detailed plans for consciousness-raising educational programs that Jimmy had been developing for decades, but had never implemented because he felt the world wasn't spiritually ready for such comprehensive transformation of how music and education could serve humanitarian purposes rather than commercial or entertainment objectives. Universities around the world began establishing consciousness-raising studies programs based on Jimmy's philosophical writings, recognizing that his spiritual and intellectual contributions deserved academic recognition alongside his musical achievements that had previously been their only focus when considering his cultural significance and educational value for future generations. The revelation of Jimmy's true legacy prompted a complete reevaluation of his place in music history, with critics who had dismissed him during his lifetime now acknowledging that they had fundamentally misunderstood the scope and significance of his consciousness-raising mission and artistic achievements that had been operating on multiple levels simultaneously. Rolling Stone magazine published an unprecedented apology for their decades of underestimating Jimmy's contributions to popular music and spiritual culture, admitting that their focus on commercial success and entertainment value had blinded them to the consciousness-raising educational and spiritual purposes that made his work genuinely revolutionary, rather than simply commercially successful. The Grammy Awards announced they were creating a special Jimmy Cliff Award for consciousness-raising music, recognizing that their previous categories had been inadequate for honoring artists whose primary purpose was spiritual education and social transformation, rather than commercial entertainment or technical musical innovation that impressed industry professionals. Music streaming services reported that Jimmy's catalog was experiencing unprecedented demand as listeners around the world discovered or rediscovered the consciousness-raising messages they had overlooked during his lifetime, with many reporting that his spiritual psalms were helping them cope with personal challenges and social anxiety in ways they had never experienced through other artists. The global response to Jimmy's death and the revelations about his hidden legacy created a consciousness-raising cultural moment that demonstrated how profoundly one dedicated artist could influence human spiritual development while remaining humble and focused on service rather than personal recognition or commercial success. Young musicians began studying Jimmy's consciousness-raising approach to artistic development, understanding that authentic spiritual music required personal transformation and commitment to serving others rather than simply adopting consciousness-raising themes for commercial appeal or artistic credibility. The Jimmy Cliff Institute for Consciousness-Raising Music was established with funding from his estate, creating educational programs that teach artists how to develop their spiritual missions while maintaining artistic integrity and avoiding the commercial pressures that often corrupt consciousness-raising messages. His influence on contemporary social justice movements became clear as activists revealed that Jimmy's consciousness-raising psalms had been providing spiritual strength and strategic inspiration for their work, with many citing specific psalms that had helped them maintain hope during their most difficult struggles against oppression. The discovery of Jimmy's consciousness-raising collaboration with other legendary artists led to the release of a comprehensive box set featuring previously unknown recordings that demonstrated the full scope of his spiritual and artistic vision, giving the world access to decades of hidden consciousness-raising treasures. Music educators began incorporating Jimmy's consciousness-raising philosophy into their curricula, teaching students that musical excellence required spiritual development and commitment to serving humanitarian purposes rather than focusing exclusively on technical skill or commercial achievement that might lack deeper meaning and social value. Documentary filmmakers began producing comprehensive studies of Jimmy's hidden influence on global culture, revealing how his consciousness-raising philosophy had shaped movements for environmental protection, civil rights, spiritual awakening, and social justice across multiple continents and generations of activists who had been inspired by his music. The revelation of Jimmy's secret educational programs led to the discovery of thousands of students around the world who had benefited from his consciousness-raising instruction, without knowing the identity of their anonymous benefactor, many of whom had become successful artists, activists, and educators themselves, while carrying forward his spiritual mission. International human rights organizations began acknowledging Jimmy's contributions to their work, revealing how his consciousness-raising funding had supported crucial legal battles, educational programs, and community development projects that had advanced civil rights and social justice causes in regions where such work was dangerous and underfunded. The United Nations announced plans to establish the Jimmy Cliff Center for Consciousness-Raising Arts and Global Peace, recognizing that his approach to music as spiritual education and social transformation offered a model for how artistic expression could serve international cooperation and conflict resolution in ways that traditional diplomacy couldn't achieve. Religious leaders from multiple faith traditions came forward to reveal how Jimmy's consciousness-raising music had influenced their own spiritual development and community service, demonstrating that his universal spiritual message had transcended religious boundaries to promote interfaith cooperation and mutual understanding across cultural divides. The economic impact of Jimmy's hidden philanthropic work became evident as communities around the world reported how his anonymous contributions had funded schools, hospitals, environmental projects, and cultural centers that had provided essential services and opportunities for generations of people who never knew the identity of their benefactor. Music therapy programs revealed that Jimmy's consciousness-raising compositions had been central to their work with patients suffering from depression, addiction, trauma, and other mental health challenges, with clinical studies demonstrating measurable healing effects from exposure to his spiritual music during treatment and recovery processes. The revelation that Jimmy had been secretly mentoring young artists throughout his career led to an outpouring of testimonials from successful musicians who credited his guidance with helping them develop both their artistic skills and their consciousness-raising missions while maintaining integrity in an industry known for corruption and exploitation. Academic researchers began studying Jimmy's consciousness-raising techniques as a model for how artistic education could serve personal development and social transformation, leading to new approaches in schools and universities that emphasize the spiritual and ethical dimensions of creative expression rather than focusing solely on technical achievement. The discovery of Jimmy's extensive correspondence with other consciousness-raising leaders revealed his role in coordinating international efforts for social justice, environmental protection, and spiritual awakening, demonstrating that his influence had extended far beyond music into active participation in global movements for positive change. Prison rehabilitation programs disclosed that Jimmy's consciousness-raising music had been a central component of their most successful programs, with former inmates crediting his spiritual psalms with helping them develop the personal transformation and sense of purpose necessary for successful reintegration into society. The ongoing publication of Jimmy's previously unknown works continues revealing the depth of his consciousness-raising vision, with each new discovery adding to understanding of how completely he had dedicated his life to serving others, while maintaining the humility and spiritual focus that characterized authentic consciousness-raising artists. Schools of social work and community organizing began incorporating Jimmy's consciousness-raising methods into their training programs, recognizing that his approach to combining artistic expression with social justice activism offered practical tools for effective community development and systemic change that traditional approaches had failed to achieve. The establishment of the global network of Jimmy Cliff consciousness-raising centers created opportunities for artists, activists, and educators worldwide to study and implement his spiritual philosophy while adapting it to their own cultural contexts and community needs, ensuring that his mission would continue inspiring future generations. Mental health professionals reported increased interest in consciousness-raising music therapy following revelations about Jimmy's work, leading to research studies that documented the measurable psychological and spiritual benefits of exposure to authentic spiritual music created with consciousness-raising intentions rather than commercial entertainment purposes. The Jimmy Cliff Memorial Library and Archive was established to preserve and share his writings, recordings, and educational materials, providing researchers and consciousness-raising artists with access to decades of wisdom about how spiritual music could serve human development and social transformation in ways that pure entertainment could never achieve. The silence that fell over the music world following these revelations about Jimmy's true legacy was not the silence of indifference or ignorance, but the profound silence of recognition and respect for an artist whose consciousness-raising mission had been far more successful and comprehensive than anyone had understood while he was alive. This silence represented the world's acknowledgement that they had lost not just a musician, but a consciousness-raising spiritual teacher whose lifetime of humble service had transformed global culture in ways that were only becoming clear after his death, when the full scope of his hidden contributions can finally be revealed and appreciated by generations who had benefited from his work without understanding its source. The legacy Jimmy left behind continues inspiring new generations of consciousness-raising artists who understand that authentic spiritual music requires personal sacrifice, lifetime commitment to serving others, and the wisdom to prioritize consciousness-raising purposes over personal recognition or commercial success that might compromise artistic integrity and spiritual authenticity. His example demonstrates that the greatest consciousness-raising artists often work in silence, allowing their spiritual missions to unfold gradually through service to others, rather than seeking immediate recognition for their contributions to human spiritual development and social justice advancement that would transform communities and inspire future generations. The revelation of Jimmy's true influence prompted a fundamental reevaluation of how society measures artistic success, shifting focus from commercial achievement and celebrity status to genuine spiritual impact and community service that creates lasting positive change in people's lives and social structures. Educational institutions worldwide began implementing Jimmy-inspired curricula that teach students to use their talents in service of consciousness-raising purposes, understanding that authentic artistic education must develop both technical skills and spiritual wisdom that can address humanity's deepest needs for meaning and connection. The Jimmy Cliff Foundation announced plans to establish consciousness-raising arts programs in underserved communities worldwide, ensuring that his mission of using music for spiritual education and social transformation would continue reaching people who needed hope and inspiration during their struggles against poverty and oppression. Contemporary artists began acknowledging how Jimmy's hidden influence had shaped their own work, with many revealing they had unknowingly been following consciousness-raising principles he had pioneered decades earlier, while working behind the scenes to guide global cultural development toward more spiritual and socially conscious expression. The discovery of Jimmy's philosophical writings led to their publication as a comprehensive guide to consciousness-raising artistic practice, providing future generations with practical wisdom about how to develop spiritual missions while maintaining authenticity in industries that often prioritize commercial success over meaningful cultural contribution. Record labels announced new initiatives to support consciousness-raising artists, recognizing that Jimmy's example had demonstrated the long-term value of spiritual music that serves educational and transformational purposes. rather than simply generating short-term commercial profits that lack lasting cultural significance. Music festivals worldwide began incorporating consciousness-raising educational components into their programming, understanding that Jimmy's approach had shown how entertainment could serve spiritual development and social awareness, while maintaining artistic excellence and audience engagement that created meaningful community experiences. The global silence that followed Jimmy's death eventually gave way to a profound spiritual awakening as people around the world began implementing consciousness-raising principles in their own creative work, carrying forward his mission of using artistic expression to heal communities and inspire positive social transformation throughout all levels of society. His legacy continues expanding through each person who chooses to prioritize spiritual service over personal recognition, demonstrating that consciousness-raising artists can achieve immortality through the lives they touch and the positive changes they inspire in communities that need hope, healing, and authentic spiritual guidance for their ongoing personal and collective transformation. If this incredible story of how Jimmy Cliff's true consciousness-raising legacy was revealed only after his death, silencing the world with recognition of his profound spiritual contributions to global culture and human development, moved you deeply, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more amazing tales of artists whose consciousness-raising missions transcended commercial success to achieve genuine spiritual transformation that continues inspiring positive change in communities worldwide seeking authentic hope and healing.